Hello, I'm Jake the Dev, and today I'm going to take the database app that we made a couple videos ago, and I'm going to turn it into an app that uses dependency injection. So if you haven't seen that video, I'd suggest you go back and watch that before you watch this one, because I'm not going to cover everything that I did in that video. I'm just going to make the changes necessary to make this an app with dependency injection. So the first thing that we'll need is we need to adjust our dependencies here in our build.gradle that's in our app module. So I'm just going to go right below this capped right here, and we're going to do an implementation, and we're going to do com.google.dagger Dagger, another colon, and 2.13. And then we're going to do capped again. This one's going to be com.google.dagger Dagger dash compiler 2.13. So now we're going to build, and it looks like everything worked. So now that we have Dagger in our project, let's go ahead and make our new provider. So we go into our Java right here. This is where we want to be. So right here we're going to do a new package, and right here it's going to be providers. Okay, so we're going to make our new provider, but first, before we do that, we're going to make an interface. So we're going to go over here, and it's going to be an I for interface, pet, provider. So we want an interface for a couple of reasons. Number one, having an interface it's a good practice. It's a good coding practice. And number two is an interface is helpful in helping Dagger inject our service into our activity. So we have our interface right here. We're going to have, first we need to say that this is a function. And we're going to get all. And we're going to get a list of pets. We're going to have a save function. Now, for the purposes of showing you how this works, I'm going to make these other methods. So these are the two that we're going to use, the get all and the save. That's not what we want to do. We want to import. There we go. So we're going to flush these out. We're also going to make an update, but we're not going to use the update. I just want to show you that this is what you do. All right, so we have a get all, we have a save, we have an update, and delete. Now now that we've got our interface done, and that's all that we're going to have in there, we're going to make a new Kotlin class. And this one, we're just going to do pet provider. Okay. So before we start, right now we can do, yeah, that's fine. We can do pet provider. And it's going to get mad because it's going to say you didn't implement the methods. So let's go ahead and implement all the members. We want to select all of those and hit OK. So Dagger gave us a couple of good annotations. So we want singleton. So what the singleton annotation does is it tells Dagger that we only want one of these instances during the life of our app. So no matter how many times we have injected this into different views, it's all going to be the same instance. So that's good. So in here, we're going to do inject, and then we're going to type out constructor, and I'm going to hit Alt return. So inject, the inject annotation tells Dagger that we want this injected into our provider. So what do we want injected in here? We want our pet DAO. Okay. So if you're not familiar with what a DAO is, the DAO means data access object, and it has to do with the database. Again, if you haven't watched the last video, the database video, I would go back and watch that before you take this on. But all we're going to do right here all we're going to do is say, hey, pet DAO, get us all of the pets that you have. To save, we're passed in a pet, and we're going to go pet DAO and insert, and we're going to pass along that pet. For update, we're going to do pet DAO dot update, and we're going to pass along that pet. And then for delete, we do the same thing, pet DAO dot delete, and just pass along the pet. All right. So now that we've got that done, and before we work on our injection black box, so let's go ahead and clean up our main activity. So that will be over here. This is the cool thing about dependency injection. We're going to get rid of all this crap. And I am actually going to go into the database folder. I'm going to go into helpers right here, and I'm going to delete the helpers folder. But what we are going to have here we are going to have inject, and we're going to have a late init var pet provider. We're going to have an iPet provider injected. Now we don't have our black box, our injection black box set up, and I call it a black box because we don't really know what happens, but we know that what Dagger does behind the scenes is it makes this box to enable us to inject things. Injection goes here. So we're just going to leave that little comment for ourselves. All right. And this whole method can go in the garbage. So right here, we're just going to do pet provider save, and we're going to pass along our pet. And then right here, we are going to get rid of this task. We are just going to go to our pet provider. We're going to get all. We're not even going to have the UI deal with that. All right, so if we go to, let me see. I want to reformat code, that's what it is. So that's Option Command L. Okay. Generally, when you do that, it cleans up your unused imports as well. Just kind of surprised that it didn't. So we deleted that method. We deleted the helpers folder. Okay, everything's looking good from here. So before we make our black box, we also need some dependency modules before we can proceed with that dependency injection. So we need 3 at this point. We need 1 for context, we need 1 for the database, and 1 for our new provider. So we are going to make a new package, and this one is going to be application. So I'm going to do application dot dependency modules. So let's do context first. Context module. So here we need to declare it as a module, so we give it that annotation. So we have a context module, then we pass in private val context, which is a context. We're going to have a provides. So the provides annotation, it tells Dagger to create a provider method binding the method's return type to the return value. So the component implementation, so that black box implementation that we're going to make, it will pass dependencies to the method as parameters. So we have the provides, but we also want a singleton. And this is going to be a function context. So that's all we need for this module. Now we need a database module. Database module. This also means that we are going to be making some changes to our database class that we have in the database folder over here, the app database. But we'll wait for just a second. We'll do this first. So we need to do app module. Class database module. And actually in here, so we need to include the previous module that we just made. So we type includes equals, and then the context module. It doesn't like that, so we need to actually do the 2 colons and then class. Don't believe we have to do Java. I think we have to put bracket around it. Yes, because it's an array. So if you needed to pass more modules, you would just do a comma and keep typing. But that's all that we're going to do for here. So now that we have this, now we need to do that provides again. At provides, and again we're going to do at singleton, and this is going to be a function called app database, where we pass in the context, and we are going to return an app database. And this is where we do, if we look over here, this. So we have room dot database builder. Oh, we're going to return this. Oop. Room dot database builder. We pass in the context. We pass in the class dot Java, and then the name of the database file. Then allow main thread queries. Now this is the no that you shouldn't do in production, but for right now we're going to allow it. Dot fallback to destructive migration dot build. So that's one method. We have one more. Provides, and you can name this whatever you want, but it makes sense to name it what you're going to get. So pet DAO database app database gets database dot pet DAO. Okay. So here we're going to clean this up a bit, and we are just going to delete that companion object. So all we want is the abstract class app database, where we have an abstract function that gives us a pet DAO. Yep. Great. So now that we have that, we have one last module to make. And this one's going to be called the provider module. So we're going to do the at module, and then we're going to include the database module, 2 colons class. Okay. And this, I believe, needs to be an abstract class. And in here, we need a binds. So the binds annotation tells Dagger to bind abstract methods of a module. So here, what we want is we want a function that binds our pet provider. So we're going to call this bind pet provider. And then we're going to pass it an implementation of the pet provider. But we're going to say we're going to return an iPet provider. All right, and now that we have that, now we can get to work on our black box. So I'm going to go to project, it's for app, source, main, Java. It's not project, it's packages. Sorry, I'm trying to get to, maybe it's just project files. Yeah, it's this one. Because we need to get to application right here. So we have here, right inside application, but not in dependency modules, in application, we're going to go to Kotlin file. And so you would name this like your app. So for example, this is an example database app. So this is going to be called example database app component. And that's actually going to be an interface. All right. So we want to mark this as a singleton. We're also going to mark this as a component. So component, the component annotation tells Dagger that this is where the magic happens and where we want to control our injections. Our injected services. Okay, so yeah, so this is our black box. This is where we inject everything that we might need in all of our activities. So you can make this say whatever you want. So it doesn't have to be inject. I saw a tutorial where somebody did a like poke or fill but using inject just makes sense. But then the reason they did that was just to show you that you didn't have to just say inject. But I like the inject because it tells you what's going on. So we are going to inject the stuff into the main activity. And that's our black box. If we had more activities, we would make more of these inject methods that pass in our activities. But we don't. So we're just going to handle the one for now. Okay, here. Now we're back in application. I just switched back to the Android view. We're going to go to new Kotlin file. And it's going to be a class. So this is going to be See, we named our component example database app component. This one is going to be called example database app. Let me mark this one with application. So then we have a companion object where we're going to have our laid-init var component, which is going to be an example database app component. Very good. Now we have an onCreate. We're going to override the onCreate. And this is not a component, this is the application. Okay, just so if you wonder why there's no bundle or anything in here, it's because this is on creating our application. This is what's going to happen. So we want to make a call to super, but then we want to set our component. So we say component equals, and we're going to take this entire component name, and what we're going to do is we're just going to add Dagger to the front of it. So to have Dagger make the component, we need to add the word Dagger to the front of the component class name. Now it's going to go red and it's going to bug us, but I promise it'll work. So do builder, context, module, then we have our context module, and we pass in our application context dot build. Okay, so we have our example database app, but we need to link this in our manifest. So if I'm going to copy this right here. We're going to go into our Android manifest, and right here we're going to do name. Oh, I didn't even need to copy it. Just hit enter, and there we go. Just to get Android Studio to stop yelling at us. Here we go. So our application, we've pointed the application to this example database app. So now it knows that this is our application here. So we have this. This is great. But there's one last thing that we need to do. We need to make sure that things are injected in our main activity. And we left, oh, sorry. Go to our main activity here. We left this nice little comment to remind ourselves. So I'm going to do example database app dot component dot inject this. All right. So now that that's done, we should be good to go. So I figured out what was wrong. So here in the component with our black box, we need to pass it the modules. So I need to say the modules that we're passing is our provider module, and then we just do class. So now that we have that, we've got our inject and everything, we should be good to go. So if we click this, let's see what we got. Running tasks. This is good. Okay, so we got our add a pet. So we're going to add Monty, which is my dog. He's a Maltese poodle, and he's 10. We're going to say the pet. Pet inserted into the database. Okay, and now we're going to view the data. All right. So one thing I really like about all this dependency injection is that it makes things really, really easy to pass along data using singletons and services. So this also means that we don't need to make helpers, we don't need to make extra threads, because the dependency injection, what Dagger does is makes those threads and does it for us anyway. So we deleted a lot of kind of gross code, and we kept things nice and clean, and just had abstract classes and interfaces. So that allows things to be really, really clean. So that is how to turn our database project into a project that uses dependency injection. So that'll be enough for today. If you have any questions, feel free to email me or make a comment on the YouTube video below. Thanks. I look forward to hearing from you, and have a good day.